For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. I'm Surya Gangadharan. And welcome to this special show on Panjshir and after. My guest this evening is Major General Sanjay Meston. He was India's former DA, Defence Attache in Kabul from 2011 to 2014, and has been in touch with developers in Afghanistan for some time. And he also visited there a couple of years ago. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much.
So my first question. The reports about the collapse of the resistance in Panjshir. It seems like what happened to the rest of the Afghan military in other parts of Afghanistan. Did you really anticipate this kind of a collapse?
Surya, thank you for inviting me over. Firstly, I would say that the collapse has not been there. It is only partial success to Taliban. The backdrop to it is that today early morning, my friends in Afghanistan informed me that somewhere in the midnight, the Pakistan Air Force had struck large number of targets in Panjshir Valley, including Amrullah Saleh's house, and this carried out, with the fighter aircrafts, with the attack helicopters, and with the drones. And my assumption is that since the Pakistan ISI chief was already there a few days back, I think he was in specific targets during, the Taliban had acquired these targets, and therefore these were given to the Pakistan chief of the ISI and further to the Pakistan Army and Air Force, and that is how this effect has taken place. Now, let me tell you, the collapse has not been there totally. And as a military man who has himself been to this area of Panjshir Valley, there were a lot of strategic advantages in this. Firstly, the terrain favors the defender. Then most of them were fairly well stacked up in terms of their internal logistics of arms, ammunition, etc. Third is, that the Panjshiris intelligence network is excellent. Even when the Russians had entered, I had just gone into a lot of details since I was there on ground and spoke to those people. So they explained to me that how a Russian tank, if it is entering, they would lure the tanks to enter, and the intelligence would be passed, and at the appropriate time, they would resort to ambushing. So therefore, they had this advantage. Another advantage is, the ground total conditions were known to them because they are the localites of that place. Then the strategic military advantage, the terrain favors the defender because on both sides of the valley there are huge barren mountains which are totally, if you occupy these mountains, they provide observation into a lot of areas in the depth areas of the other areas. So that these advantages were there. So if you now recollect, I'll just take you back to a few days back. Taliban had shown some photograph of a valley, that they have gone inside and they have captured. Now this was all false propaganda, and I've been following it. And since I had been there, I could correlate that this area is totally different. And Taliban has been every day talking about it, that they have gone inside, they have captured, and they have attacked and everything. But the resistance movement has been, saying otherwise. But the actual ground position was that many Taliban soldiers were captured, many surrendered, and many have been killed. So their morale was at its bottom low, and they were thinking, they will it would be a cakewalk like what had happened with the Afghan National Security Forces. So that, of course, did not happen. Thereafter, now what has happened that since this was becoming an extremely tough nut to crack for the Taliban, they have sought the help of Pakistan, and that is how the ISI chief was there. And therefore, they resorted to this targeting by last night. And now this actually has resulted into quite a substantial amount of casualties to the Panjshiri fighters. Therefore, the initial part of Panjshir Valley, where the entrance is there and the governor's house and Amrullah Saleh's house and even the house of late Ahmad Shah Massoud and his son. Now, these
Yeah.
areas have now come into their control, but it is not total control the way Taliban is proclaiming it. The balance of
Okay.
the Panjshir Valley, which extends further deep, right up to Salang Pass, this is again with the Panjshiris, and this is again going to be a tough nut to crack for them. However, if the Pakistan Air Force is allowed to continue unhindered the way it has happened, entering into, violating the territorial sovereignty of another nation, and the whole world is quiet about it, then things could be other way that it could result into a fairly quick collapse of the Panjshiris. And the reason for collapse I have already highlighted, but
Yeah.
the most important issue to understand is that, see, as an army man, I know what defenses are. Now,
Hmm.
in the Indian Army and all along the line of control and the LFC, we have permanent static defenses which are well made, underground, well connected. Now, here it is not this kind of a defense system. Here it is, they always go to some dominating height, fire at the enemy, change their position, go to some other place. So, therefore,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to explain is there is no overhead protection and they are exposed by enemy air. And this is how they have suffered casualties. And this, if it continues unhindered,
Hmm.
and if the UN Security Council and the international community does not prevent this, then perhaps this chain could continue where
Hmm.
things could be little bad for the Panjshiris and bad for the whole world also, I would say.
Hmm. So that brings me to my next question. The outside world seems largely unmoved by what is happening in Panjshir. Even India has said nothing. Does this suggest that there is a tacit acceptance that the Taliban, let them control the whole place? It doesn't really matter now.
Absolutely right. See, it is a tacit understanding, and let's be very clear that the shots in Afghanistan have been always called by, the Americans. It has
Yeah.
been very, very clear. Americans were the ones who were pushing for these peace talks, and since 2012, all these backdoor parlors had started. So, America sitting quiet on this, and I was even wondering, I was watching CNN channel, etc. They have never showed anything about Panjshir, whereas the Indian channels and I was seeing Russian TV, they were showing about it, and including, this Qatar TV, Al Jazeera was showing about it, but neither BBC. So this was a question which I was asking myself, why they are not showing it. So the fact of the
Yeah.
matter is that these people had decided. See, their aim was very clear to support Taliban because they feel the Taliban will give a viable government, and therefore they indirectly have totally supported this, and they have not given any help. Least realizing, they have forgotten the past where it is the same Northern Alliance which helped the Americans to enter Afghanistan. It is
Yeah.
not that
Hmm.
through where they have entered; it is through the northern areas of Afghanistan which they entered. So this time their quietness is well understood. However, now quietness has been also on part of Russia, and then of course China, as it is, it suits them, so they have to be quiet. But China, Iran, Tajikistan have been quiet. Especially Iran and I would say Russia, they have been quiet, and they are thinking, that by showing their loyalty to Taliban in this manner, they are thinking that it is not going to affect them. But my sense is that Americans have got a little long-term plan. Probably they are going to use this Taliban maybe to start hitting Russian interest through these Central Asian republics and even China through Badakhshan and all these areas. So their
Uh,
strategy is something else. Yeah.
yeah. Mhm. So the
So
report
what I'm
about, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I am trying to say that there has been a tacit understanding of most of the world powers remaining quiet. Now coming on to the Indian side, I think for India, frankly, because we have really no land connectivities with Afghanistan.
Yeah.
See, we have 100 kilometers of borders with Badakhshan, and especially that unfortunately lies in the Gilgit and Baltistan
Yeah.
area, which is with Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So we are, we have our strategic or logistic limitations of connectivity, and therefore India really can't do much at this juncture except provide moral support the way we have been doing to the Afghans. But the balance of the world has been so quiet about it. At least I would compliment the Indian media. Frankly, they deserve a compliment, and all channels. They have been really exposing and highlighting about the Panjshir Valley, and that is why I'm so glad that Amrullah Saleh and his spokesman were always, conveying their point of view through Indian channels. So the tacit understanding probably has been there from the major powers of the world.
So, given reports about factional differences within the Taliban, there's also reports that the Haqqani Network, backed by the Pakistanis, is emerging as a powerful factor in the push for a new government, as and when that happens. What do you make of all this?
See, this is a reality, and this will continue to exist. The tribal loyalties and tribal issues and differences in Afghanistan has been always been there historically. But now
Yeah.
coming on to this thing, see, let's go little into the backdrop. The peace talks were started directly between US and Taliban somewhere in 2012. They had started off, and that is how their office then moved to Qatar. Now, in the initial stages, even Pakistan was kept out. So Pakistan realizes that America, that is the United States, and Taliban have been doing parleys directly, and thereafter they started involving Pakistan to some extent by telling them to release prisoners of wars in 13, 14, and then they released Mullah Baradar in 2018 and so forth. So Pakistan had no choice but to follow the dictate of the Americans. Now coming on to this issue of the factionalism, when I was there, I had luckily met a very close aide of Mullah Omar, who happened to be his classmate, childhood friend, and he had told me that Mullah Omar is in hiding in Quetta, and each night he is changing his hideout in Quetta. So I said, why? The reason was that the Pakistan army was targeting to kill him. I said, but why should they kill him? So the response was that Mullah Omar then had slightly become fairly moderate, and probably the foot soldiers of Taliban and all these people were getting tired of war, and therefore they were trying to reconcile with the Americans, and that is how the peace talks were given an impetus. Now the
Yeah.
Pakistanis realized that if they allow him to continue, it will be detrimental. So therefore, they had plans to eliminate. And let me tell you, I had given written reports that he was actually killed in 2013, but it surfaced to the international world in 2015. It came out that he was killed. Now, why they
Yeah.
wanted to kill him? They wanted to replace him with then Jalaluddin Haqqani, who was alive then and who was the leader of Haqqani. And he was a total Pakistani man based in North Waziristan. And he was considered strong, and therefore they wanted to change the leadership of Taliban to this gentleman Jalaluddin Haqqani. Anyway, he also died. And now you are aware that despite all this, peace talks were between US and Taliban. Suddenly, I
Yeah.
am now finding that Haqqani has emerged, and I do not know again why the US is quiet about it. They should, because peace talks were between Taliban and US, not with even Haqqani. No, Haqqani has suddenly come into this fray, and you are aware. Media reports are also very clear that Anas Haqqani, Sirajuddin Haqqani, now they are taking active role. And I think there have been some issues, major differences between these two factions for the ministerial berths, and not only that, even between Quetta Shura. I would not say not the this can also be termed as Qatar Shura, because all these people were based there.
Yeah.
There have
Yeah.
been discussions between Mullah Baradar and even Akhundzada, who's supposed to be the
I see.
spiritual head. So there have been
Yeah.
differences. So my understanding of the situation now is that these differences will continue, and there is going to be one fallout of this. See, these differences will firstly not allow them to govern easily. There will be a lot of misunderstandings, and therefore the foot soldiers of both sides who get disillusioned by the leadership because now they are
Hmm.
talking about some softness and this thing, especially Taliban. When these
Yeah.
foot soldiers student, they have a ultimate way out. I feel they will join ISK because they are
Yeah.
more of a different vision. And all these people are being controlled by Pakistan. So therefore, I see this problem will continue, and these in-house fighting, these factionalism will continue, and it will be impeding the functioning of this so-called government, and that is one of the reasons it's also not going to be an inclusive government. If you see,
Hmm.
the signals are that it's not going to be an inclusive government, and surprisingly, Hamid Karzai, Abdullah, sometimes they are also put under house arrest. So I really do not know what kind of a governance will emerge, but my assessment is that the future of Afghanistan is not going to be good. And let me tell you, this setup suits only one country, and that is Pakistan.
Yeah.
Because Pakistan wants, their strategic aim is that the Pashtuns,
Yeah.
whether
Remain
he is,
divided.
they should keep fighting among themselves, because if Pashtuns on both sides of Durand line, if they
Yeah.
start uniting, then they will, just declare the Durand line null and void, and they will go back to the original borders,
Hmm.
which Daud Khan then, as the leader of this Afghanistan in 70s, was looking, and 74 to make a greater Pashtunistan, and therefore the borders will fall back of Pakistan to Indus River. So this is their one of
Hmm.
the biggest issues. So it suits Pakistan to keep the Pashtuns fighting among themselves, and they are very happy about it. So this is
Is
what
this,
the
you know,
future seems to be.
there's a reference by a US general of possible civil war. Do you see that kind of scenario shaping up?
Yeah, it can only shape up if this resistance movement lasts. See, civil war conditions had also emerged when there was a void after the Russian withdrawal.
Yeah.
But this time, yes, some kind of a difference, if it may continue between these factions, that itself can result into little wars, civil wars, because see, they all have their own kingdoms, small kingdoms. This can result into something. More than
Hmm.
that, the other parts of the country, like this Panjshir, if this resistance longs for a longer duration, let me tell you, this will give further impetus to other areas like Kunar, Nuristan, Leghman, Badakhshan, Takhar, and all these areas. And this
Hmm.
will give impetus. Plus, the women also are getting, emboldened. So, if
Hmm.
this resistance can last for a longer duration, so civil war conditions are likely, and especially so with the kind of factionalism developing between these so-called rulers, who are the likely rulers. If this continues, because see, even again they were vying for power in 92,
True.
91,
Yeah.
90. They were vying for power, and all Gulbuddin, Hikmatyar, and Sayyaf, and all these people were fighting among themselves. Again, who mastered this?
Yeah.
Pakistan. And the whole of Kabul city was destroyed. Palace was bombed. So this condition, again, Pakistan will try to keep these factions fighting so that it results
Hmm.
into a civil war kind of a thing, which only again suits Pakistan, no one else in the entire region.
So, last question. Is India's strategy of wait and watch? Is this the best thing that we can do?
See, for India, actually, my take is that maybe perhaps we should have thought about it in 2012, 2013, because that
Mhm.
time the US drawdown was announced what we have to do. And that time the government was the different government, and thereafter the present government took over. I had personally been suggesting, and my reports had gone right up to the levels where it had to go. And that time, let me tell you, I happened to contact even Taliban,
Mhm.
especially Sher Mohammed Stanexai, because he's one batch junior to me. And I got hold of my son, some Afghan course-mates who were with me in Kabul. I
Mhm.
managed to get hold of them, and then they knew him. They told me about his entire traits and everything, and we did establish contact. But thereafter, I think it was not carried forward, because see, The government has its own reasons. Then government way back in 2013, 2014
Yeah.
had their own reasons. But now, whatever, if we start talking now, I think the Taliban will exploit that because they will say, you know, it is fait accompli to
Yeah.
India, ki no, they have no option but to talk. That time, perhaps in case we could have just had some, at least meeting with this IMA fellow, Sher Mohammad
Mm-hmm.
Stanik, you know, because he is a soldier, whatever it is, and he's had his loyalties with India. And when my coachmate spoke to him, Stanik Zai had a very, very high impression about his training in India. So if some soldiers, we would have gone and met him. After all, soldiers are also diplomats. I think some ice would have been broken, and now it could have been used now. But recent meeting what we had in Qatar with our ambassador, I think it had its both fallouts. It had become a political issue.
Yeah.
So perhaps now it's a very, very difficult situation for India to take some decision. But I think I personally feel we should keep looking at the emerging situation and based on that, perhaps we'll have to take decision. But we should prepare for various contingencies so that we are not caught off guard. Even I
Yeah.
would say we should start thinking how to support resistance, how to think if it is a civil war. All contingencies we need to visualize and plan for each contingency so that when the particular situation arises, we are geared up, we are prepared, we are not found wanting. And I think a core group which has been set up, it's a good idea. The core group must delve into all contingencies, possibilities, and give firm recommendations to the government of India. And my advice is the core group should have more of some retired people who have been in that area. Not I am advocating for myself, no,
Yeah.
whom the government, because retired people who have expertise, ambassadors and diplomats and so forth, our suggestions, and we are connected to the people. I
Yeah.
know of one person who has been advisor to President Karzai for 8 years. So he has his contacts. I have my contacts. So the ground level contacts we can give to the core group, and it will assist in decision making. And therefore, India can we have to cater for each contingency, each
Yeah.
scenario, visualize it, and take action whenever the need arises. I think that's the only way forward for India.
So my takeaway from this chat with you, General Meston, is that India needs to prepare for the any contingency that could arise, and given the fact that the differences within the Taliban could push the country into another civil war. General Meston, thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you, sir, and look forward to continuing this conversation in the future. And for all of you out there,
Thank you very much.
you.
So kind of you. It was a pleasure interacting with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And for all of you out there, thank you for joining in. We saw all your comments and observations. Keep them coming. Do subscribe to our channel, come to our website, and keep following us on YouTube. Thank you and good night.